Yeah.
For you. All right, everyone, I have 6:13. We'll get our Tuesday, June 10th, Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, called to order. Please rise. We'll have a moment of silence followed by the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item, I'll look for a motion for a chair take over for tonight's meeting since our chair is absent today.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion for Roland Rantham to run the meeting.
I have a motion. Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Nicole, you have to call roll or just all in favor?
Let's call it roll.
Okay, Denise, please call roll.
Yes. Ms. Mayor?
Yes.
Ms. John? Yes. Durant?
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of minutes from May 13th, 2025. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? If so, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, as I was absent at the last meeting, and I defer to you.
Sure, I'll second. Nicole, please, for further discussion, Denise, please call roll.
John? Yes. Ms. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes. I see no preliminary hearings on the agenda tonight. We have a public hearing, that is BZA 25002. It's developmental standard variance, Alexander, I would say last name, Lamus, family dental request variance from section 266701B 5T to install a cabinet sign table 266701B sign to monument sign dimensions and additional standards for height, area, setback, and materials at 131 Ridge Road. Is someone here to speak on behalf of the petitioner? If so, please state your name and address for the record.
Certainly. My name is Scott Ye. I've been engaged as counsel. I had represented these folks in the past, actually before this board. But Peter Lemus reached out to me. He is one of the principals here, Peter Lemus. And so Peter is here this evening, and I'm going to just be assisting him as necessary, but he's got some updates for you. And I'm sorry, my address is 3 Lincoln Way, Suite 201, Valparaiso, Indiana.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for having me again. My name is Peter Lemus from 131 Ridge Road in Munster. Since the last time we were here, we've been working with Denise, Nicole, and Sergio to handle some of the previous variances that we were requesting. So as mentioned, we took over this building about a year or so ago, and it's almost 40 years old. And so what we feel is best, because of the hardship of the dilapidated sign, we wanted to uplift it by redoing the sign and making a brand new look for our tenants. And since we took over, we had about 2 tenants that wanted to move. And so we feel that by putting a nicer sign, it'll attract new people to the community and make it a very professional space. And so the sign is going to have panels for the tenants. There's a doctor right now and a lawyer, and we want to attract some other professional services and other places to come into the building. And so by making a nice new sign, we feel residents in the community will be able to see the sign better. And so just as an update, a little list here, since we were last here, we originally had a full aluminum sign that sat on a brick base. And so we worked with Sergio to now make it a full masonry structure that has aluminum panels that affix to the sign and that are backlit. We previously had a polycarbon sign. We've now changed it to routed aluminum with backlighting. We moved the setback to the current position of the sign. We had it a little further ahead, but we moved it back. And we also fixed some of the address fixtures on the sign to make it less large and less maybe distracting. So we did a lot since the last meeting to try to appease the current ordinances, and we feel that the current setup would be really nice for tenants and also the neighborhood, and really make it a nice new addition to the community. So really thank you all again for listening to us.
And just briefly, I do want to at least, let you know that, we're prepared to address the statutory requirements, right? Health, health, and safety of the community will not be impaired, by this placement. First of all, they've set it back, more in conformity with the current zoning ordinance than the existing sign, and they've set it back, as Peter has detailed to you, as suggested by Sergio in that discussion. Peter's here and will assure this board that he'll work with Chuck and whomever to make sure the appropriate permits are obtained. We'll work with appropriately licensed contractors, electricians, to make sure this installation is done fully compliant with the code. Further, we don't believe that we will have an adverse effect on the use and value of the surrounding area, including our neighbors. As you can see from the photos that are included with Peter's submission of the existing sign, the existing sign has been there for quite some time. Its condition is challenged, and he's looking to install a sign that is more in keeping with the town's current objectives. Yes, he does need some variances, so obviously the height is one that we need to talk about, and we understand. But he does have some challenges in that area, and would ask that he be given some relief from the strict application of the zoning code, in that he's got a neighboring car wash that kind of intrudes upon the vision. In working with his sign consultant and also trying to come closer, as he's described to you, to the requirements, he has narrowed the scope of the request for these variances. And believe me, I know this board is reluctant to vary from the sign ordinance. I know a lot of thought went into it. I think looking at his proposal and the type of sign, first of all, it is going to be in character to those buildings. It's going to be substantial. It's going to be quite an enhancement to what is there. We're not seeking a digital board. We're not seeking anything that is going to obscure the vision of passersby, or more importantly, drivers approaching that intersection. So I think he does meet the statutory criteria. Of course, we understand, and that's for you all to determine. And if there are specific questions, Peter's happy to speak to those, and involve some legal matters, I'll be happy to. One thing I do want to point out is that the petitioner is Family Dental Care. That is an affiliate of Osceola Properties Inc., the owner of the property. Peter is a member owner of that corporation that owns the property. We did have a discussion with Ms. Bennett just to give that assurance that he's, the entities, although they use those entities, this is not a sign for Family Dental. This is for the benefit of the tenants in that center, including the folks that have been there for quite some time and would like to see their signage updated.
I'm just trying to determine what the actual hardship is. When I look at your proposed sign, you are almost a little less than double what's allowed by the town code, right? 18 square feet, and you're at roughly 32 square feet. For reference, your height of the sign is 8 foot 8 inches, I believe, correct? If you look at this room, you're probably 1.5 foot taller than these doors right here with signage, which is a pretty tall sign. To give reference, community hospital, much larger building, much larger parcel. Their sign is 10 foot tall. Now, they have multiple businesses inside here, because there's a handful of doctor's office inside a community hospital, yet their sign is really not too much bigger than what you're asking for a 4-unit condo building. I don't feel the car wash blocks you. I've been driving down Ridge Road for 25 years. That sign is the farther down the street. Don't see that as an argument, you know? I don't know if you want to look at putting 131 Ridge Road numbers on the building, being able to lower your sign and not make it 9 foot tall next to the building. That's a pretty large sign for a 4-unit tenant. I don't see it in other areas. I was driving down Ogden Avenue and York Road today in Hinsdale. I've seen a lot of buildings on that same strip, and the only thing they had on that building to mark the building was the address. And I think nowadays with apps we have with Google and everything else, I tend to put what business I'm looking for into my Google map and go by that way, you know. So I'm torn on the size of the signs, since, you know, we worked really hard on the sign ordinance to try to have consistency in town. And we are double the size standard on signs.
One thing that just, maybe that wasn't clear in Peter's presentation or missed something. The sign height that's being proposed is 69 inches, so a little short. 7 foot or 6 feet now.
Is it different from what's in the drawing? The drawing goes 104 inches and 69 inches wide.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a sketch drawing that was shown to illustrate the differences, so I just wanted to make sure that I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that is the measurement, so this is not the measurement. Okay,
Apologies.
I was incorrect. I was looking at a sketch here and point out some differences, so.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, it's there.
So what, in comparing the existing sign size to the proposed sign size, the area in that yellow or photo, it looks like a yellow photocopy drawing, hand drawn. Do you have that handy?
Yes.
Okay, so in the area that the written word, okay, is located, it's 78 inches wide. And my guess is maybe 40 inches high based on your sketch. That sound right?
Yes.
Okay, so 78 by 40. In comparison to the area of the proposed, where the existing is 78 inches wide, the new is 60 inches wide. And the existing is 40 inches tall, the new is 75 plus the maybe 15 inches for the address, so 80 inches tall. So that, I think that's where we're getting a little concerned. Why is the font so much larger in the proposed than in the existing?
So that's the way our sign company had designed it, and we felt based on their, you know, years of experience, it's best for tenants to sort of stand out. But we're willing to work with you all in terms of what would be ideal. We're trying to balance, you know, the tenants wanting a nice new sign because it hasn't been a new change, but also what the city views as, you know, ordinance. But yeah, we're willing to work with you all in terms of figuring that out, and we just want to make it a win-win for everybody.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the changes that you made to it as far as the routed 10 panels, backlight, aluminum pan, all of that, you know, it looks very nice. The issue is the size. For me.
I agree completely. I appreciate the fact that you did the step, you addressed everything we asked you to address, except for its proportion in comparison, but yeah, I like everything about it except for the size. I agree.
So I mean, in order to save time, you know, and rather than sending you back to the drawing board, I mean, what would you be willing to reduce?
72 inches is the current code limit, is that right?
Yes, yes. but also the area.
The area.
At 18 square feet, so 6 by 3.
Right.
However you want to do the math for 18 square feet, right, or 9 by 2.
I guess we're willing to work with you all. What would you, ideally like us to have it at, and we're willing to do that to make it work?
Well, I think the whole purpose of us going to these monument signs, so they weren't almost like we got rid of like the elevated pole signs or big monstrous signs, so we were trying to work on the height for 6 feet, so things aren't, detracting from the buildings with, driving down 41 and pulling to a strip mall there, and the sign is overpowering the building, we're looking at building buildings here in town, that the buildings are the first thing you look at, and signage is secondary, right?
Mhm.
We want landscaping, quality construction of materials, and signage is secondary in nature for us. So I mean, when you look at, your sign being, closer to 9 feet and 6 feet, it's a stretch. I mean, I think you can lower this sign down that 6 feet standard. I think you can put the address nicely on the building with some letters. Because you're allowed to have signs in your building, correct?
Correct.
Right.
So if we remove the 131 Ridge, put that on the building, and then kept,
At least you're down to what, 70,
Something like
down to. I can't tell, all the
Maybe,
numbers on here.
yeah, you might give us okay.
maybe 75,
Right.
I'd say, to be.
Maybe down to 84,
Right, because you're at 75 right now, and I don't know what the base is, how much it's, well, I can't do the math.
yeah.
And this is,
All right.
I'm missing a number on top.
You wouldn't
Yeah.
want to lower
Right.
that any lower. But I mean, if you shrunk it slightly, you could probably get it down to 72 without the address. Do you have any signs on the building currently?
Nothing with the address to my knowledge. Is that something we can do on the side, or, I'm not sure if we have to go back to getting a variance for that, but.
Nicole, I think you're allowed to put signs and addresses on the building. without
Yes,
any-
because that doesn't count into the square footage
Sure.
because it is a directional or informational sign.
Right.
And I put, just to add to clarify that, just as you're calculating what you want to do with this, under 26-6.701D, under the code, the sign area computation is based upon the total height of the smallest rectangle that encompasses all such lettering. So that measurement, that 8'8" is obviously going from the top of your, 131 ridge down to the bottom of what would be that tenant. So that other brick around that would not be calculated into that area, just so you know, if you're looking at kind of readjusting any of these numbers. So I would direct you to that section for full.
Right. Right. So if you eliminated the 131 Ridge Road on the monument sign and put the 131 on the building and lowered the height down to 72. That,
That would work for you all?
Yeah,
If you get rid of 131 ridge, you'd be within the,
code, right?
you'd be within the code, at the same measurement.
Yeah,
Just
you're at
don't
6
keep
feet
that.
high.
That brick topper. Even though,
so the
I'm sorry.
overall height of rather than the 104, the total height, including that stone cap at the top, would be 72.
Yeah, but to- Calculate the actual red box here. I can't, see 75 inches. 65, right?
Yeah.
So you're 6 by 5, it's 30 square feet, aren't you over 18 square feet anyways?
They would probably still need a variance,
Right.
though. Right, they still need a variance. So. But the height is within the code.
Nicole, you're saying, I'm sorry, the
It would
the
measure-
code says the brick could technically be there, but we would like not to see that. Correct? Because it,
If they're compliant with the code, they don't, you can't tell them otherwise. The height requirement though, that maximum of 6 feet is separate from the area of the signage. The actual signage on the you know, what they're proposing at 31.25 to get down to the 18. They would be much closer in that respect if they are, if you're only looking at the top of American Home Choice, and I mean literally where the letters are at, not the sign plate. Then down to the bottom of what would be the 10.4. From that measurement would come out, that would be the space that would be calculated for purposes of the area.
So you're
So you're
taking
saying the 53
75 minus a 3.5.
down at the bottom where it's 53 versus 60, are you saying the 53-inch dimension is the one?
Yes, and yes, because if you follow that up, that would be the Choice Home Health, the outside of that.
So if the,
A square around the full, you know, whatever is the easiest way to make the square around all of the text.
The lettering, right?
right, well, so I mean, if 7 inches is that dimension, right? Between the frame of the sign, that sound right, between the 53 and the 60?
That would not be calculated.
So then it would be 75 minus 7. It'd be 68 inches by 53 inches for the sign area.
Yeah, it's hard to tell exactly with this, but I think that should close to that wheelhouse because of whether that's 3.5 inches coming off the top or probably not, probably more.
Roughly 29 square feet. Not taken. That box, I'm sure that Sergio's calculated that box around there is the back panel. With the extra-
He's using a little kind of back.
But they still, I mean, they still needed a variance,
Right.
just not for height, just be for the size of the lettering.
Gross area of the sign.
So the existing sign is only 5 to 9, correct, is very down, see.
So this is a public hearing.
Yeah, right. Cut it out first, you know. Does anyone have any other questions for the petitioner?
No.
Then what I'll do is I'll open up to a public hearing first and bring you up afterwards. Tonight, for members of the audience, I know there's a lot of Munster High School students here. This is the public part of the BZA meeting. So if there's anyone that would like to come and speak to this, on behalf or against, any ideas or thoughts on behalf of this petition, you can step up to the microphone, state your name and address for public record. If you'd like to add anything. Going once. Going twice. I will close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to the board. John, have you gentlemen proceed to the microphone?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve this petition based on the revision of the sign dimensions, the elimination of the 131 Ridge Road on the sign, and reduction of height down to 72 inches maximum. Width to remain as shown on the drawing, and signage to be remain as shown on the drawing except for the address.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion, second. Is there any discussion? Johnny, does your petitioner understand what the motion was?
Yes.
Any other further discussion? I'll have you call roll, please.
Ms. Mayor,
Yes.
Ms. John,
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Mr. Rattler.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, I see no continued discussion items. We have findings of fact, which is BZA 25003, development of standard variance to Glasgow WT Group represented school town of Munster. I received variance from section 26.64501H7 parking lot landscape standards, table 26.6502. E, public lighting head type, section 26.6405Q2B. Pole height in section 26. 6405Q3C, color temperature at 8823 Columbia Avenue. Has everyone had a chance to review this? If so, I'm looking for a motion. This is just the findings of fact based off of the meeting record as that was of the rule of last one. So just a motion to put the findings of fact in the record as an accurate reflection of what we discussed last
I
one.
will make a motion for approval of the BZA 25-003 finding of fact.
We have a motion to a second. Any discussion? Please call roll.
I'll abstain as I was absent.
Ms. John?
Yeah.
Mr. Hemingway?
Yes.
Mr. Rattler?
Yes. I see no other business on the agenda. Our next regular business meeting is July 8, 2025. Seeing no other business, I'll look for a motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Munster students, you want to come up here? Do you have to ask any questions for the report? What do you have going on? Sure, come on up. Do you understand the process of what's going on?
We do apologize. Hung up over 3 years.
No, that's okay.
That is wonderful.
Please don't.
All right, folks, I'm going to call this meeting of the Town of Munster Plan Commission to order for Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. Please set your phones on stun. We'll have a moment of silence before the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Denise, nice seeing you. Call roll, please.
Noel?
Present.
Commissioner Flanagan? Present. President Baker?
Present.
Commissioner Rattler?
Here.
Commissioner John? Councilor Hopper?
Here.
Councilor Jenkins?
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Next up is the approval of minutes from May 13th, 2025. I'm sure you all read them, studied them. Any motions?
I'll make that motion.
Motion to what, Councilman? Motion to approve? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second, any discussion? Be there none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Out there to read forever at the website. Next up, preliminary hearings, to which there are none. Next up is a public hearing. First up is PC 25-006, a development plan review. Mark Smith, B. Anthony, on behalf of the Family Christian Center, requests review of a development plan from 340 45th Street. This is a continued public hearing. Is Ms. Bennett, do we go straight to the public hearing, or can we let the petitioner reintroduce this?
Commissioner needs to reintroduce.
Petitioner, somebody to speak on this behalf, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and let's go.
Good evening. My name is Zenon Kurgel, and I'm the principal of Ritter and Associates Architects, the architects for the proposed addition to the Family Center Church. And just to refresh everybody's members, what we're proposing is to do an addition to the east and north side of the building, which will be done in 2 separate phases. The east end, specifically area for storage in a small chapel, and the proposed front, which is creation of a large vestibule, for lack of a better terminology to use it. We'd like to get approval for both projects, but we will be submitting for permit for the east addition first. And then, finishing up the project by doing the north addition.
That's it?
Uh,
Did we have a whole bunch of conversations last month, sir, as it relates to the square footage that was on the paperwork and how it was so different from what was actually being requested as part of the presentation?
No, I apologize. It wasn't that was that much different. There was a misprint as far as the square footages that's doing, and I could go through that. So give me half a second, please. Okay, so the existing building currently as it stands on the first floor is 60,457 square feet. The second floor is 38,516, which gives us a grand total of 98,977 total square footage of the existing building as it stands. What we're proposing on adding to the east addition will be 14,758 on the first floor, 10,293 on the second floor. For the north addition, we're looking to add 10,000 square feet, 765, and 479, for a grand total of 36,586 square feet. And which gives the grand total of the entire building at 135,588 square feet. So with regards to the parking, that was an issue that we discussed last time also. The existing parking lot currently has 774 parking spaces, 16 ADA spaces for a total of 790. There's also a staging area which isn't striped. It's basically at the back of the building on the south side, where we're proposing on adding 90 additional spaces. So by adding to the east side, we're losing some spaces, which brings us down to 703 plus 17 ADA spaces for total proposed parking of 790. And for the overflow parking, adding another 90 parking spaces. So what we have is a grand total of 810 parking spaces. By code, all that's required is based on a seating count, and it's basically 30%, 30% of the amount of seating in the building, which currently is at 1,909 times 0.33. So by code, all we require is 635 parking spaces. So we're well over on the required parking space count.
I'm assuming we're not seeing any presentations because of lack of staff today. I mean, I appreciated the list of all the math, that was great, but we didn't see the plans and we don't see where those changes were or anything like that. Is this addition, go ahead, Ms. Betty, you have something to add?
Yes, I can. If you go to the exhibits that were attached as part of the staff report, and then 12 the exhibits as part of that, those are updated. And as laid out in the staff report, itemizes that parking and the square footage numbers. I think that there's a few inversion on numbers perhaps that I just want to clarify, so that our record is clear. If I may at this point, based on the updated information, which was in the prior reports, but which is kind of discombobulated a bit. I believe the numbers you were looking for was what was the actual expansion. And as stated on page 2 of the staff report, I believe are those accurate numbers at East Building. On the first floor being 14,758. And the second floor being 10,293. And on the north building expansion, 10,785 on the first floor and 749 on the second floor. That gets to the same number as what was discussed last month, which was the total expansion of 36,585. um, for all floors and all areas. Which was the question that we're having before, was exactly where was the square footage and how that was calculated. There has not been changes to the proposals and is what in the staff report also is what to fix in the site plan itself as well as the floor plans. Those are the same in that respect. The parking space calculation, as was discussed last month, is modified because of the expansion of the building that is taking the parking spaces directly in front of the of where those improvements are being made on the east and north sides. But this is not because of the additional parking that they have already with the overflow. It was not in any way getting it below when it's required parking. So that was not an issue or any request that we need to make for any variance or approval of that development plan.
The baseline on the parking was based on pews because it's a church, right? And
Based on seat, I believe,
even if it's a folding chair?
if that's what it's based on, it's as seats and then what they calculate out as being part of the seats within the pew. So what they calculate as being actual seats.
So if I have a big open room, are we calculating it based on how many folding chairs I can get in that big room?
How many folding chairs are set forth as being the area that is used for, those services, obviously they have to be in the fire code. So it's what will be put out for services, separate prayer groups, whatever may be.
And this went through site plan already.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Well, the committee, yes.
Yeah. Yes, questions for the petitioner, Ms. Bennett? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
In my really rough notes from last month, I had that the current parking was at 810. But there were actually 720 spaces. I believe that I remember that the small chapel had a capacity of maybe 1,000, but the plan was to set it up for only around 200 for smaller events and stuff, but it did have a larger capacity. Is that correct? I mean,
Yes, it is correct. And if you recall, Pastor Steve clearly pointed out that the smaller chapel that we're adding is never going to be used in conjunction with the main building, because he presides over both, and the smaller chapel strictly for smaller weddings, funerals. So they'll never be used simultaneously. So in other words, we're going for the greater occupancy, which is the main chapel area seating, discounting the fact that there's space because they'll never be used at the same time.
I understand that, and I appreciate that. I do remember Pastor explaining that. I guess as this committee sits here, there's no assurance that in 5 years, there won't be an associate pastor or there won't be someone else who would conduct a wedding at the same time that there's a funeral, or I don't even know what the possible rubric could be with that. But things change over time and spacious. So if it has the capacity for that, I feel that it needs to just be considered as the traffic and everything going into and out of the church is notable as it is. If those, I feel like we need to account for what could happen, not how we plan to use it today, if that makes sense. Not trying to be difficult in any way, but if it has that capacity, I feel like that's what we should plan on.
I totally understand. Excuse me for 1 second.
With the parking as proposed, 810 spaces plus the 900, I'm sorry, plus the 810 spaces, that That is 174 seats over what is required. And at a 1-to-3 ratio, that would allow for 522 additional people
In that room.
in the facility. So based on what they have, that's the number of people that would be, or I'm sorry, the equivalent to the seats, which then, you know, equates being the 1 and 3, so it would actually get you to 522 more. Car.
So the 810 more than accounts for the potential seating area. I thought it was around 1,000.
No,
No,
it's not. We did a layout, we counted the seats. We have a total on the first floor of 183 seats that we could fit into that space. And if you go by the, code requirements for parking, 1/3 of that, so in other words, about 61 cars. So if you add, 61 cars, excuse me, we're still well under the 810 that we have on site, so that is in consideration of.
okay,
The
so what you're
possibility.
saying is not based on the plan that you have to utilize the space currently, but the maximum capacity of that space as far as seats is 200 and,
No, 183
100.
additional seats.
so in the small chapel, maximum seating capacity ever.
Correct,
Now or 10 years from now, however it's being used is 180 seats. So
correct.
my notes. Okay, thank you.
Gary,
Yes, sir.
what's your maximum occupancy for a building? What are you allowed by code for whole building? Maximum occupancy?
With the expansion or out?
With
Without?
everything. Then if you, I mean, is it 1909 based on the seats, or is it more?
It's based on the seats. It's 1909.
The 1909 never had more than 1909 people.
I can't speak if there's any more, but I do know that whenever there's something that's, a major event, we try to accommodate by finding parking off-site. And I get it, it's pretty packed sometimes, but there's always a police force who are involved with, making sure that traffic is controlled and it doesn't create, headaches for the immediate community.
The reason I'm asking is obviously living in Munster for a long time, a lot of people in Westlake. So it's like one of their biggest roads and hurdles is coming out there when that church is busy and traffic and parking and everything else. So
I'm sorry, sir. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
okay.
Oh, you have to talk to the microphone.
Sorry, yeah, these aren't working. I was just saying, after being a resident for 20 some years, having lots of other citizens that I know that live in Westlakes, traffic and parking and all those issues has always been a concern with the church. Obviously, now we're adding 36,000 more square feet to the church. A lot of people are worried about that same concern, whether it's traffic and parking issues. So we want to make sure we address all that.
No, I think it's a very fair question, and the things that I need to point out is that on the East Addition, the majority of it, other than the small chapel of 183 people, it's primarily storage, costumes, and other things that are utilized for the productions that the pastor has on a rotating basis.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, is this on?
You just have to look at it.
I just was looking through the renderings and they seem to be the same ones that were proposed last time, but I remember that we talked about the pyramid shape over the portico share. The 2 portico shares, and you're not doing that. I was just wondering why the renderings weren't updated, and I mean, as we're getting ready to approve these. Like, pretty simple.
I apologize for that. I didn't realize we needed to amend the renderings for it. They were just a graphic visual what we were originally proposing.
Are you originally proposing also to have a signage of the Last Supper on the side of the building?
Yes, we're proposing a cross on the front of it and having the Last Supper in a similar fashion to what you're seeing there now.
So the Last Supper is up there, but the pyramid, what did you call those fancy things? The pyramids are there as well, but we're not doing the pyramids, but you are doing the Last Supper.
That is correct.
So how do we know what we're doing and what we're not doing? Is it something written out as it relates to what we'll see at the end of the project? Or is that something we're supposed to glean from these renderings?
You know, the only difference on the renderings is the triangular pyramids that were over the portico shades were removed. Everything else stays the same as drawn on the drawings.
Ms. Bennett, is a picture of the Last Supper considered signage?
No.
Really?
Falling into First Amendment protections.
Because it's the Last Supper, so if it was a picture of Michael Jordan, it wouldn't matter.
Just a picture of him, no, depending upon if he's doing something that gives a message, then it could be signage.
It's going to basket. It's going to basket.
Thank you.
No.
Any other questions for the petitioner before we open it up for public hearing?
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
I don't see an updated landscaping plan.
There isn't one required because they're not affecting the way of the building coming out. It's not. What they're taking is the front of that portion of the property that was grass in the front and then some parking, so it's not affecting beyond that area.
What about the east side?
The east side is just the extension of into the parking lot as well.
Project summary states the proposed east expansion will eliminate parking spaces and increase landscape area. That's what it says. I don't know, I went to public school, but that's what it says.
Mr. Baker, my question would be is obviously, you know, we have requirements of landscape trees down the parkway, and I'm not sure why we're not bringing.
They're not affecting the park. The site itself is legal non-conforming in complying with the current code. Their construction is only to the building. And so in that respect, it does not get out to amend that. Now, if they were changing, the ingress or the entrances, moving them over where it was different curb cuts, things of that nature that would be affecting that. But unfortunately, unless there is a change to the site, that site itself, obviously in this sense, and I'm not quite sure, even in looking at their plan as to that east side of the building, what's pulling out there is what's showing in there is proposed expansion.
I mean, increasing the size of the building is a pretty significant impact on a parcel. I mean, I would think that would trigger everything.
Doesn't, you got sites, you got building, and they have uses, and they're all separate for purposes of the non-conforming. So your landscaping that, is affected, yes, Mr. Rath is showing it on the proposal. I'm looking at exhibit B, the site plan. And that is showing the landscape on the east addition to that open area in front of the parking. So that would be impacted.
You're taking out landscaping, and going out farther, I believe, is there landscaping in front of some of that, the driveways? Yeah, pull
The east side, you have a exhibit B, which is the site plan.
D,
B,
Site plan is B.
I'm sorry,
oh, sorry.
is in the way. Page 4, the last
Yeah.
page. So that's showing on the east
Take it
side.
out. Let's do,
Aren't you taking out that whole island in front of the entrance all the way down? You're removing landscaping?
that's that guy.
No, we are, yeah, sorry.
So none of that island in front of the driveways?
No,
all that
we're
landscaping staying there?
We're coming up only on the paved area of the front of the building, the north side. And we're leaving everything beyond.
On page 5, it shows the north, and then on page 6, the east expansion, and it shows in certain staff reports a comparison of each of those. Obviously, they're not color in that respect, but it's the same entrance off from 45th. And likewise, as bolted into off from Margot as well. thinking. It's going to correct the landscaping on the east side, with the expansion, and is moving out from there, what was the parking there, right directly in front of the building, there is landscaping that in front of the building, between the building, the expansion, the east addition, and the parking. So that area. And it's not still going to look like.
The island came out in front of them.
This is site plan right here.
That's when it's up there. It looks like it came out to me.
Look, can you step up here when I'm looking at the addition here? Go back to that last page, the color page right there. And I don't see that island there anymore. I see parking there and I don't see the landscape island. Go back to the north addition, the east addition, sheet, DD 1-1. Which is a proposed site plan. I look at this. If you look at here, look at the addition, there was a landscape island here. You have parking here now. Where did this landscape island go? From the building.
This is the landscape right there.
That's not parking spots right here?
And those are parking spots, yes.
Would that fit exactly? Because I can't tell by not having.
We just moved it up to that curb line.
I mean, it's hard to tell. It's here. There's lines here.
Yeah. Indication of trees or.
There are 11 parking spaces, because there was 2 rows of parking, then they have the expansion, plus there's the landscape island with the 2 rows of parking. Now we're into basically 1 row of parking. See how there's 2 rows?
Yeah, right.
That's the parking measure. That's changing, that's where your numbers are coming from. You're talking about existing landscape island?
Correct, with the trees on it right now where the canopy is for the drop off.
On the,
And then you walk past that, landscape island, you get to the parking, it's 2 parking rows along, 45th. Technology does help in some ways. Sir, can you come up here and look at this aerial and explain to us where and how this compares the aerial to what you're proposing, because I'm not seeing it.
Sure. Basically, this is
If you
the,
could get an aerial up there, that'd be great. Google Earth.
this is the existing parking that's there. This is where the drive-through underneath it. We're coming up simply to this point. We're leaving all of this, including the landscaping that's there.
So the ADA parking is gonna be in this first row right here?
That is correct.
so we're not losing parking on that side. I thought we were.
Yeah.
No, we're losing parking on the east side. We're leaving everything that's.
It looks like the corner is different, right?
Yeah, we-
Taking out
we
there,
trimmed it,
taking out here, right?
Yes.
Right.
So there's no longer gonna be a way for folks to drop people off under the canopy in front of the building?
That is correct. There's going to be 2 spaces. The proposed addition is going to have the portico shades where 2 spaces are going to be available for dropping people. Correct. Absolutely. The only thing I could also add to this thing is that we're asking for the approval of letting us proceed. Keep in mind that we will now be generating permanent construction drawings for both the east addition and the north addition.
Yes, sir.
And if we find that anything needs to be done, that could be all addressed. You have a review process on that also, so we're more than happy to hear your thoughts and get your input.
Great. Any other questions for the petitioners before I open this up for the public? Once, twice. All right, I'm gonna open the public hearing up. If you'd like to speak on this particular petition, please come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and have at it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sean Buell. I've been a resident of Westlake since it first opened. So I've been there 26 years. And I speak on behalf of several of my neighbors that we oppose the addition for the church. Any Wednesday, special event, Sunday, it's almost impossible to get in and out of the subdivision. And if you actually go to the church, I don't care how many seats you count. I've been to walk in on some of these events. There's people standing everywhere. They just pack it. There's always overflowing to bank parking across to the trucking facilities across the way. And I just don't see any way to put an addition in there. And they call that new 90 parking stalls to the south of the building where they used to stage some of their props and semis. They call that staging and overflow parking. They've been using that space ever since they put that church there. They pack it in as full as possible. They park in the park on their heavy events. And I just don't see, if you give them more space, they're gonna fill it. So we oppose to it, and if we have to, whatever, I'll walk through the whole entire subdivision, get everybody to sign the petitions, but we just don't want it. Most of their parishioners come from Illinois, other areas of Indiana. It's really not our community church, and we don't want it. I'm sorry? I'll sign it, sure.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this petition? Please come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please. Going once. Going twice. Close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. To deal with here. Sure.
I would draw your attention to page 7 of the staff report. It identifies the applicable code provisions that apply to a development plan as set forth in your ordinance, and then as well, the same considerations are duplicated in the state code. As part of a development plan, in your consideration of those items, everything from the increase on the services of the town, park, schools, et cetera, the appropriateness for the drives functioning, parking, obviously the consideration of that, the development standards relating to how that's circulated, what are your considerations for traffic overflow, like that. Obviously, any of that is legal for you to consider in your analysis. As part of a development plan consideration also, you are permitted by law to add any reasonable conditions to the development plan approval. It's not in a situation, right, where it's one or the other, or there's even conditions that have to be met prior to construction, but rather conditions that can be placed upon the use of the property, or I say use, not in a sense of, I'm talking about physical use, things that you're concerned about, such as occupants, parking. Obviously, as part of any building inspection, it's going to have to be part of the fire code. And occupancy will be established, and whether or not that 1900 number is the current or based on the size, I can't speak to that. I'm not quite sure what the fire chief has for occupancy, but such issues as, whatever is that consideration from the fire chief that is enforced, obviously that's going to take whether or not it's a enforcement from the police department or the fire department to confirm that at any point. But I believe there's some discussion regarding moving forward. Ms. Johnson brought up about if there's ever an associated pastor and what would be. there are reasonable conditions based upon those concerns that can be placed, having to do with how the building is used. It's one of these, smaller areas, chapel, in addition to the, larger sanctuary of the church. I just put that out because whatever RMV is created with that, any consideration for the limitations that we want to put in development plan approval for any of those things that are consideration. Obviously, you also have the option, because of the same considerations, to do an outright denial of the development plan as proposed. Just put it out there, it's not an all or nothing. The law allows significant latitude with development.
So you're saying, Ms. Bennett, as it relates to that, thank you for outlining those public sector options. But if we said, hey, we like more landscaping, that's something that can be a contingency, a part of this development plan approval.
No,
No,
only as.
there was a whole list of things you said we can do, and then all of a sudden that's not one of them.
Because what you're talking about in context is related to the expansion and concerns on, parking, driving, capacity, issues because of the flexibility of the structure to allow for more seating.
What about the retention ponds? When heavy rain flows in, them and the two businesses go into the one retention pond. It goes up to the sidewalks.
If that, as part of the development plan, there should have been some consideration for that, for purposes of those drainage because of the additional.
Because the poor bank is always flooded.
And if that's going to be affected as part of the additional square footage impervious surface. Now, whether or not the impervious surface is actually being increased by the building space versus what was concrete is really, becomes the issue in that perspective.
Isn't it a town engineer type of thing that we should see as it relates to expansion like this? What happens to the pond? Has it been kept up to the point where it's achieving the capacity? In the past, that's something that we would always see.
There would definitely be some to see.
Yeah, I would like to see an engineering.
Am I understanding that you're saying, as far as like, say, the dismissal, the resident here was talking about the concerns over the dismissal, if there's something that we find necessary to add or to change, that's within our parameters that we can do that
As it
or
relates-
request that?
As it relates to the expansion itself and the use of that space.
So obviously, if they're increasing square footage, they're gonna be increasing people in attendance, so it's gonna just kind of magnify.
So those type of things are what the limitations have to be related to what the development plan changes are in the situations expansion of the building. So if that right is consideration for parking or consideration for vehicular traffic, things of that nature. Where you can't cross over, as Mr. Baker was asking, was that this then, is gonna expand out to landscaping, let's say out along the parkway.
Right.
That's where it's separate because it's not directly related to the change in the site plan, the change in what the development change is the building. In that respect. So yes, as to for example. Unfortunately, just no to.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I need a little more, I need analysis and evaluate this on my own, to look at it because if
Engineering.
to give a blessing on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's my question is I'm not looking to say no, just to say no, but it's very clear to anyone who drives through our town that particular, the infrastructure coming out of West Lakes and along there is insufficient as it is now. So what can we do? And when you add square footage, it just seems like it's logical that you add people. I'm not looking to get in the way of progress for the church, but it's a burden to the entire town going that way and come in. So often I sell real estate for a living. It is an objection for people as they look to buy homes in West Lakes. That traffic is,
Yeah, we're-
it's notable. So what can we do? How do we, I don't know, like,
well,
I mean, we can add the square footage, but then all of a sudden, you know, have we ever done occupancy? Is that something that's ever spot checked? Because it feels like,
It is, but it's not something that is spot checked by your building department. It's going to be a fire, it's going to be fire code, so enforcement from that is coming through your police and fire. Not where a building inspector can go out and say,
can we spread out? I know Pastor said that he didn't want to do more services, you know, we were like, okay, so how could you? But what, I mean, I realize we're a plan commission, but what could we do to enable the church to get what it wants and needs as far as storage? And a small chapel, but what, I feel like we need a work session or something to find out what we can legally do that helps them
Yeah.
meet their dreams and objectives for the church, but also protects
well, it's
the
a
infrastructure and.
revolving door. It's like services at 8:30, they're coming out, others are coming in. Why don't you wait an hour? Let the
Yeah,
person-
some of those
yeah,
things
let's
maybe.
work with them on that.
I would propose that you put the bulb in the court of the church for such things as some alternatives that would be considered by the planning commission as, I mean, as you're expressing these things. Because obviously they're the ones that are knowing what, right, is their capacity to get into these services. How long it's taking for their parking lots to clear. Whereas I would propose that for anyone otherwise sitting on this board, it's going to be guessing. And it's really not the job of your police or fire to make that determination when you're the ones asking for it. So to use town services for that purpose is not something that I would recommend in that regard. As for the drainage, consideration of that, I don't believe that, I have not seen anything to that respect. Whether or not that was something that was discussed with your planner, I am not aware of. Those are definitely considerations as part of the development plan approval, and if that's obviously concerned, you know, that you have Mr. Jenkins to put forth those requirements. Now, whether or not that you want to see those reports, that you want to see those things done, whether or not it's a decision at this point on taking action on this as proposed, or whether or not the petitioner wants the opportunity to address some of these other concerns and to work through this with staff, is really kind of a work purview as well as theirs.
And it was brought to my attention that they would like Margot to go all the way to the train station. Get
No, we
all
don't.
Sheffield. No?
Not even
Okay.
close.
Huh?
Not even close.
Who are you talking about?
No, I'm just saying.
There's a highway through there now.
No,
You
I'm
know, there's-
saying-
Hold on a second, sir. Hold on a second.
I'm talking, it was proposed. We ain't gonna let it happen. I live right on Margot.
Thank you very much.
No, it's gonna be a one way in, one way out, as long as I'm here.
What about a traffic study? Is that within the realm of,
This
I feel like that will be a really good place to start.
absolutely is in the realm.
I just want it to be a win-win for
Well, yes.
I mean, this traffic study, I mean, that makes sense considering it's always been an issue, but it would have to be set on certain days, and how does that
Right.
equate? I mean, they're busy on Sunday, you just can't go and do Sunday.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can't
what
do Monday
happens?
morning at 6 o'clock.
Right, so,
And you gotta get Calumet, 45th and Margot full.
It's just the impact that it has, as is indicated on page 7.
Right.
As you point out, there's a very real impact on our town right now, so.
And obviously the other issue in the giving direction to, you know, the engineer who would prepare a traffic study is also what is the change, right? If you're just looking at the current circumstances and what the traffic study is, that's going to tell you one thing, but then also to contemplate, like you're talking about, if there are changing services,
Yeah.
more services.
But maybe that
Both of these utilize.
facilitates a conversation.
That really is some of the factors too that the town has. I mean, like I said, you do have the capabilities all related to the development plan. That if there were some considerations on the things you're talking about down the road of only permitting so many as part of the development plan commission, so many services in a day, or capping, you know, numbers which can be attending so that they're not getting into right, the successive part that New York said, but adding to the traffic that's along with the standing room. Because of obviously adding more space, that leaves the open possibility, I'm not sure who said it, of putting out more chairs. So there are, you can put those considerations, it's just pinning down what they are, and that's what I say. I would propose that is back to your petitioner as to what they are proposing, and then what specifically for those things, where then you can potentially limit at a number that you find reasonable. Whether that is services, occupants, hours, vehicles, you know, in and out of that area. They have the option, obviously, to not proceed with the expansion, and then they're not under any of those, or any of those restrictions, but if they are related to the statutory considerations for a development plan approval, in this case, modifying the building that's going to create that, then you have the full authority to that.
Thank you.
We'll need to make some action, folks. So with all of that said, the other is the retainage ponds, retention ponds.
I think we need an engineering, I mean, Mr. Baker?
So Mr. Tringa's here, so please come and introduce yourself, Mr. Tringa. Have you done site drainage on this? I'm sure it's somewhere in the 7,000 pages of documents we have here. But when you add more square footage, and as we go through the evolution of the town, it's more and more redevelopment. So as we get a chance to look at new sites that have been developed over the history of the town, how do we look at those ponds to make sure that they're still at the capacity to which meets the requirements of that type of use? That makes sense.
I don't know if it does or it doesn't. What I'm going to say probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to any of you. If she could call up the proposed and maybe the existing up there as to what is on the site and what we're proposing. The hard surface area of the site, which is how the stormwater retention ponds are sized, is less after the addition than it is before. Because there was never any green space on the east side of the building, and now there is intended to be a substantial green space. So with that being said, technically the amount of stormwater retention necessary by the town of Munster, which has not been updated since this was originally designed and originally installed, is less than what is actually there. Now, it was stated that the bank and the property across the street on Margot drain into those ponds. That is not a true statement. Okay. They do not. They have their own stormwater retention, and it's inadequate. Okay. That's why they flood. Now, what we do intend on doing is there's a restrictor on the detention ponds currently as they exit into the storm sewer on 45th Street, and we intend on enlarging that restrictor to the size that is allowed by the town of Munster, instead of the size that was installed by the maintenance department of the church, perhaps. So what I'm telling you is that there is a pipe, and that pipe has a restrictor on it, which is about 1 inch. Is that correct, Tony?
An inch and a half,
Inch and a half in size.
but it's inside of a 10-inch pipe. And some brain surgeon decided that the 1-inch pipe would slowly drain in a thunderstorm or a flood. And what the problem is that.
Okay,
Go ahead.
what we are proposing to do is we're proposing to enlarge that restrictor to the size that is allowed by the town of Munster's ordinances to help those ponds drain down quicker. So with that being said, there's nothing that is necessary there as far as the stormwater retention, detention, and drainage of the town of Munster's ordinances that we have to do. Does that make sense? Do you want more clarification?
No, go ahead.
I guess all I would say is, I
I don't see it in a drawing.
don't know what our ordinance allows. So I guess I would want to see what adapting from the 1.5 inches to, I can't just blindly say, well, that's gonna do it. I'd just like to know, like, what is that? And just somebody who knows about those things.
And that
To
was
say-
exactly what was discussed at the town staff meeting, not necessarily the increase in the restrictor size. But the stormwater detention was discussed. And it was agreed at the staff meeting that there was nothing necessary to be done.
So what is our code on that, since you guys discussed it and I don't know it?
The code for stormwater retention,
As far as the restrictor, what is the size that we will allow it?
the allowable restrictor is whatever stormwater falls onto that site with nothing on it. In other words, if it was just open grass, how much water would actually be generated from a 2-year frequency storm? And that's the size of the restrictor. So I can't explain it any better.
Yeah, no, I hear
So
you.
the stormwater retention ponds are sized for stormwater falling on that site in a hard surface situation as currently exists in a 100-year storm. So you take the 2, you subtract the 2, that's how much stormwater retention is necessary.
Okay, I was just asking what our current restrictor is at 1.5 inches. What?
No,
the new-
the minimum size that any town allows is 3 inches because it does, if
That was
you
my
get less
question.
than, if you get less than a 3-inch restrictor, it plugs very easily.
And so the town and your staff meetings felt that 3-inch restrictor would adequately.
No,
Given, I get
don't
the
think
calculation
that
of
was
what you're saying.
discussed at the town. That's something that's been discussed amongst the people here. And we were trying to come up with a reason as to why the ponds fill up as quickly as they do. I was not aware that that was the situation. It is the situation, as Mr. Belmonte said. So that is something that we are going to try and rectify. And all those calculations, all of that information will certainly be sent to the town. However, it's not a requirement. That's what I'm saying.
I understand in the hardscaping and that whole calculation, but since you brought up changing the restrictor, that would take care of the problem that's seen currently, that there's some overflow. I was just trying to understand how big that could be and what the plan was that you discussed.
The entire situation there is that Westlake subdivision has a number of large lakes, as you know. 45th Street, when it was put in, it's also called what, Glenwood Lansing Road? Is that correct?
Yes.
Was designed by, at the time, the town engineers, Robinson Engineering, and they put in a large storm sewer. The storm sewer was sized to be able to take all of the commercial properties on both sides of the street, provided that those commercial properties dug their own retention ponds, which the church did, and transmit that water to the open ditch which runs in front of the airport. That open ditch runs all the way down to Burnham Avenue, where it goes through a very large culvert across the street. On the west side of Burnham Avenue, there is an open ditch. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, or paid attention to it. But that ditch goes all the way to the Little Calumet River. That is called the Thorn Creek tributary. It has, and as in Illinois, not in Indiana, but in Illinois, they have, I believe, 7 trustees that their one and only job is the Thorn Creek tributary. They are given federal funds, town funds, whatever, wherever they get that government funds to maintain that creek. I don't think they do a very good job. It's not something that we can do anything about here in Indiana, though. And that's the way that area drains.
I don't believe it drains to Little Cal.
Pardon?
I don't believe it drains to Little Cal.
It might not be.
Yeah, it's not the Little Cal River Basin, not anything coming out of West Lakes. It's
It
not.
drains to the Grand Calumet then. It drains to one of the rivers that
But
is.
it's run by Illinois, not by.
Correct. That's exactly right. And we have no jurisdiction over that.
It's not something unfortunate. that we've done.
All I'm saying is it goes north for a long ways.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Tringa on water flowing downhill? Well, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I don't have questions for Mr. Tringa, but I would just wonder if the petitioner could address the residents' comments about the overflow parking, you know, people parking in the bank lot and in the park lot, and is that true? Like, what are you gonna do about that? Did you have an agreement with the bank? Do you have an agreement with the parks for overflow parking? Or I think we need to address the resident concerns.
Tony Belmonte, and I am a resident of West Lakes also.
Are you speaking as a resident of West Lakes?
Both.
All right, and you are what, sir, to this program? I'm sorry.
I'm just a consultant.
Thank you.
So the parking, they have contracts with the warehouses across the street, parking contract and parking contracts with either the bank or Payrock. I'm not sure which one, but I'm pretty sure they work together. And they hire Munster Police who control the traffic light and et cetera. Now, am I gonna sit here and say that there's not a lot of, I've been here 20 years, 25, how long have you been here? Quite a bit. Yeah. Am I gonna say that, you know, it's perfect? No, it's not. But, you know, this was done prior to the subdivision even being built, I'm assuming, at least that's what I was told. The street and the street lights were put in before they even started the road.
No, because I was in there when they were still building.
No, they said that, I mean, our last meeting, he said that he paid for that.
I was in the subdivision, but when they were, when they didn't have services, when they were still building.
So there is traffic control, I mean, you got, when residents come in, I always thought we should have like a sticker or something where they would know, they kind of watch us when we're coming, and you can vouch for that. They kind of watch us when we're coming, and then they'll stop the people pulling out, and then, you know, they'll let us go in front. I don't, you know, I think there could be better solutions, like you mentioned earlier, in my opinion, just as a resident. They cut that curb cut, and that was brought up in one of the plan meetings, the curb cut in front. There's a curb cut, because in that discussion, they discussed bringing sidewalks from the main sidewalk along 45th into the front doors, whereas now there's nothing there. The curb, they went and put curbs this big in there, and people are going in, and if you have an expensive car, you're trashing your rims, so nobody uses that. You know, so my thought was, well, why don't they just cut it? Why don't they cut it, put some pavers there, and then somebody can, you know, traffic can move easily out of there instead of.
Out of the north side?
Exactly. I mean, why not? You can direct traffic to go that way, because most of the cars, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the cars are doing right turns when they leave, don't they? Left too?
There's 50% of them people come
Okay.
from Illinois, you can drive through that parking lot anytime, see all the Illinois plates. You see
Oh,
the
yeah.
plates in their parking.
I feel
Let's keep,
From the state of Illinois.
Did you get your question answered?
All
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, I just am trying to make sure the residents' concerns are addressed, and it seems like we are adding parking. We're adding 90 overflow spaces, so hopefully that will
Well,
solve.
they
the
use that area all the time anyways. and if
Hold
they're-
on, sir,
if
this
they have
isn't a
to-
back and forth, I'm sorry, the public is over, so we're gonna have to work through the process of this, it isn't a back.
I don't
and
know why
forth
they
debate.
get all that extra parking if they say they have plenty for the people they put in there.
All right, so back to the board. Try to do something with this, please, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Ms. Ben, I have a legal question.
Sure.
Would any parcel in town get approval based on having contracts with outside vendors for parking? So community want to build a 1 million square foot hospital, but they only had so much parking. But they had agreement with someone else. Legally, is that a binding deal since they don't
It
meet
would
our
be an
code?
agreement can
Nor would I build a high rise here.
provide for, it can qualify to have a parcel meet the parking requirements. That is routinely though a commitment that's on the property, but then has to be recorded and that the town is essentially a party to, so that it cannot be vacated in fashion without the town's consent.
Because ownership changes all the time.
Correct, in use. So if that parking right is changed where it's binding both of the existing property owner and then the adjacent property owner. Where in that circumstance, if that's the case, then that commitment remains so that it requires the adjacent property owner or whoever else has a parking agreement to be bound by it.
Has town of Munster seen any agreements in person regarding overflow parking with the church?
Not in the top, no, this is the first that I've heard, and in fact, by just my quick calculation here, if occupancy on this is at the 1909, then only, like, as was discussed, 636 seats are all that was required, so with the additional, as we said before, with that additional parking alone, obviously allows for over 500 additional people, but if it sits right now that the existing parking is not sufficient, and they do have contracts with the outside parties.
There's an issue that we don't know
And
about.
then clearly we're well in excess of 1909 on any given
That's my concern.
Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it may be. So if that, and it seems that it's, I believe, known by anybody in town that those, well, whether there's agreements or not, cars are parked in those adjacent parking lots during those services. So the consideration of the parking may be even obviously greater on site with the additional parking, but may still not be sufficient for what's actually happening for occupancy. If there are such agreements, they would clearly be something that we would want to consider as part of that, because obviously any increase in occupancy that is going to increase that parking requirement as well, and is going to become a real problem with the adjacent property and all of a sudden saying, you know, no access. And likewise, might change on with the actual occupancy standard is on the roads. That should be something that I would have record. I don't think that's just with the local, with the state building, it would be something they have records to know what that's current saying.
So Family Christian Center should bring their agreements with adjacent property owners to staff for review,
I
right?
think that's very relevant
So I think.
to your consideration.
Yeah, are we able to, in an effort to try and make everybody happy, take care of the neighborhood, take care of property values, take care of the church and its objectives? There's a lot more information. I would like to see a traffic study. I think that those parking agreements would be, can we table this? And,
If you make the motion, we can
If you
do
make a
anything.
motion.
all right, so
And you can make that motion contingent or due to wanting what those additional items are right here.
I want to make sure that I'm comprehensive in that motion, so, we just kind of talk through that. I'd like to make a motion to table, PC, where are we?
25-0.
20.
Table or you
Continue, thank you. Here I am.
PC 25-006.
006. With pending further review, including a traffic study. Not only. Well, the traffic study needs to be at a specific time, and I mean, that needs to be agreed at, and,
those details could be worked out.
okay, thank you, that's.
Graphics.
And then a proposal from whoever that is as to what, could be. It's not the right language for a motion, I know.
And even having a work study.
And then the parking agreements. And after all of that, and perhaps more, just because I think from there you gather the information and then there may be additional questions. Maybe it answers a lot of things. Maybe then we have a work session along with the church. I don't know exactly how to phrase that, but those would be the things I would just like to allow further discussion after, I guess, that information is brought to us.
That's a good second.
And then,
If I may, I
Please.
would propose that, as you indicated, that to continue this to next month, because the issue is going to be upon receiving additional information that the public hearing is then left open, or is available to be, so that you're continuing the public hearing for reopening at the next meeting, so that then any of this new information can be addressed as required by statute by the public, otherwise no advertising needs to be done. With those, as you've already indicated, traffic study, parking contracts, and additional, applicable information has been discussed here, that's probably a good starting point, which can be addressed, next month perhaps as to any additional or what the status is on that and or to include a work study. But that would provide more information, but keep this project moving forward.
thank you.
I second that.
So that's a motion to continue. Right, and Councilman, you second that? Yes, sir. Right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Be there none. Denise? Please call roll.
Councilman Mellon,
Yes.
Commissioner Brannigan,
Yes.
President Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Rathman,
Yes.
Commissioner Plant. Yes. Councilor Hopper.
Yes.
and Scott.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So now, Ms. Bennett, that's also a continuation of the public hearing, even though we closed it.
We'll just continue that altogether and then it will just be reopened at that point. For upon review of any new submission from the petitioner, so that the public has the opportunity to comment on that new information.
Got it. All right, thank you, folks. Moving right along. All right, we've got three PCs, all for the same project. For the sake of efficiency, we'll do one presentation for PC 25007 subdivision preliminary plat, PC 25008 a rezone, and 25009 a development plan review from Scott Yanni, the attorney on behalf of the Munster MOB 1 LLC at 9260 Calumet Avenue. How'd I do, Miss Bennett?
Very good.
Please state your name, sir, and address for the record, and let's go.
All right, Scott Yaney, 3 Lincoln Way, Suite 201, Valparaiso, Indiana. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here before you this evening. We were here last month, and I want to at least start out by letting you all know we listen. So you will see changes to the plan that we proposed to you, and we will call those out hopefully succinctly to draw your attention to specifically what was adapted in response to the comments we received. We have 3 petitions. We have a preliminary plat, PUD amendment, development plan. They're all kind of intertwined here. We'll address them as you would like. We've got the address correct. Also, we are going to be specifically, if we're approved, we will be 9410 Calumet. So this will be a new subdivision or new lot, single lot subdivision, 2.5 acre site within the Lake Business Center. So we're seeking to develop what we think is a first class contribution to the town. It is Midwest Orthopedics at Rush is the end user. They have very high standards for what they want to develop, how they intend to maintain this going forward, just in the types of maintenance. And as I related at the prior meetings and site review committee meetings, these folks don't say, hey, what's the minimum? When we're looking at stormwater, or we're looking at parking, it is, no, we have to deliver a first-class product to this user, and what will give us extra and above. And I think in each instance, hopefully you'll agree we've done that, but they have their own internal standards that aren't just trying to get by your code. So I do want to at least point that out this evening. I have folks online that are joining us via Zoom if needed, but we tried to condense the crew tonight. But I have our leaders here. Brian Avery and Emily Bateman, they have been involved in this project from the outset. This is Canon Design. I'm gonna turn it over to them very shortly, and they're gonna walk through what is the overview of this project, so you can see it. Also, we have Odari Lewis here from Kimley Horn. He will speak to your engineering matters and any questions you may have. There is, and we'll get to it eventually, any questions, there is a full parking study in here. Essentially, that determined, I can get you to the findings, but what we wanted to find out is, do we have enough parking? But our folks didn't want enough parking, they wanted excess parking. The conclusion after that study was that we, what I had in front of me, give you the exact count. I'll make sure we give that to you before the end of the evening. But we have in excess by about 25% of our parking demand that we would ever have in that facility. Perhaps that allows some extra relief for the adjoining property users. So if you don't mind, I'd like to have Brian come up, and he's going to walk you through a presentation deck, if you will, that are slides addressing the updates. And it's also going to give you an overview of the project to really help dial you in, and that's where we start.
Brian Avery, architect, planning design, 225 North Michigan Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. So this is a rendering of the north side of our project. If we go to the next slide, we have an overall context site plan showing where we're located on Calumet Avenue, a little bit south of Community Hospital, in the southern portion of Lake Business Center. The next slide zooms in a little bit to show that we're behind Potluck Bellies and Starbucks along Calumet Avenue. You see right there, the big MOR indicates where our building was proposed to go. We're just north of Pepsi warehouse, south of some medical office buildings to the north. You go to the next slide. This shows just a survey showing the extent of the property that we're purchasing from the buyer. We extend almost all the way to the west, adjacent to the warehouse, north adjacent to the existing parking lot. And then there's access roads to the east and south. On the next slide, we've got a 3D view showing how access to the facility would be from Calumet Avenue that you see at the bottom right of the screen there on Franklin Park. There's some existing stop signs where you see that triangle situated on Franklin. From there, you would enter into our site, progress either to parking lot or swing around to the drop off, which is where that circle is at. And there's also an exit from our from the site adjacent to our front door. Go to the next slide. This shows the dark shaded portion of the site is where the fire lane is situated in the parking lot. And then there's some existing stop signs. They're half toned in there with the red hexagons. The darker red hexagons are where we're proposing new stop signs. So that shows that the traffic flow is coordinated. We're turning a 3-stop intersection into a 4-stop intersection off the Franklin there. Continuing on to the next slide. This is stormwater management. I'm not going to get into this other than to say that we do have a our civil engineer. If you have any questions on this, he can answer them for you. Going on to the next slide, we've got our landscape plan. You can see that we've got plenty of trees situated around the property, within the parking lot, along the west edge, along the border between the warehouse and our parking lot and our facility. I will point out that along the entire eastern edge of the property, there is a utility easement for the first 15 feet of the property. So there's no trees allowed in that zone, but we do have ground cover and some shrubbery planned. You on to the next slide. This is indicating where we're proposing some monument signage with that blue diamond shape there. The green diamond shape is indicating where on the building we're proposing some building signage. And you can see it, some blow up details with dimensions on that. The 2 red arrows are indicating where we have coming up in a few slides of renderings for both the existing conditions and the proposed improvements. So view one will be from right at the end of Franklin Avenue as you're entering the site. And then we've got view 2 from the southeast, looking up at the southeast corner of the building from Calumet. On the next slide, we've got just a mapping diagram showing where the programs are situated within the building. You can see that the ground floor is mostly a physical therapy gym. The pink corner there is showing the entrance and elevators and double-wide space, waiting areas, and then the most second floors taken up by exam rooms. The next slide shows our proposed elevations. I'll pause here to say that we do have material samples if anybody's interested. Look at them, they're on the table over here. Most of the building is a masonry. We do have some articulation with recessed banding to break down the scale, provide some articulation within that brick. We also have accents with aluminum composite material, which is mainly along the parapets, but it also extends down under the canopy into the entrance on the north side of the building. We also have a lighter colored brick extending on some of the parapets as well. And then you can't see it as much on these elevations. You'll see it a little bit more on the renderings, but there is some composite wood panel underneath the soffits of the canopy and at the main entrance. On the next slide, you'll start to see this is the view that view one I referenced earlier, the existing site. You can see the Pepsi facility in the background. If you go into the next slide, you'll see the improvements that we're proposing. So this would be the north elevation that as proposed. That's the entrance canopy, and then that glazed corner is the waiting areas for the facility. On to the next slide, we've got the view for the southern and west elevations. Here's where we made a few adjustments based on some comments last time. We added some fenestration along the east elevation. I guess if you go to the next view, I'll point that out a little bit more clearly. But this would be the next slide shows the view from Calumet. The existing, as it exists now behind Starbucks is our site. The next slide shows our improvements. So this is where we've added some additional fenestration, additional recessed brick banding on that corner. You can also see that the proposed signage on the mechanical screen wall. And I believe there's one more slide just ending on final rendering and site plan axonometric.
Are you done? Oh, okay. I didn't know if there was a dramatic pause or so do you questions for this young man with regards to going, I'll start. With regards to the wraparound, the last slide that you had, Denise, that one. The glass line from where high traffic area, right? Real aspect is what it looks like coming in from the other side and that view, because I thought maybe if you had at least the aesthetics of the glass wrapping around to make that less institutional, facing one of the biggest, busiest roads in the county, that might be something to take into consideration. Because if I'm not mistaken, to the right side of the building that I'm looking at right now, that's the front entrance, that's all glass. I'm just looking at the wraparound, but I don't know what the view is if I'm coming in from Fran Lynn on that wraparound, how far it goes in along the east side of the building.
Yep. If you go back up a couple slides, you can see that entrance rendering from Fran Lynn. I answered the question right here.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
So that's the north end of the building and that's the front entrance with the canopy.
Yeah.
So the one on the left that's in the shade is what's facing the busy road.
That's correct.
Right, and I was just curious at how much of that corner is glass and how much can that continue on just as an aesthetic feature as opposed to it just being a blank wall facing the busy street.
So it's blocked.
Hold on a second.
The glass corner wraps around until it hits the elevator bank.
The elevator bank, okay.
Beyond that is where we have imaging on both level 1 and 2. We did add a couple of additional windows and they're actually haven't been updated here. They are updated on the other rendering and on the elevations. We added that fenestration just as a, you know, as a result of the comments last time. There's spandrel glass, we do have solid wall behind them because it's imaging department.
Right. So I can come in this way and take a right in front of your building and just drop off under the canopy there.
This would be at Franklin. You could take a left and enter in that way, but more than likely you're going to continue straight.
Which street is Fran Lynn?
Where we're standing.
Franklin is behind from this view.
Yeah.
We're looking at it. We're standing on Fran Lynn.
So where's that car coming from? Is that coming from?
You want to back up a couple of
Yes.
slides? That's the site plan shows an arrow where that is taken from.
So the stacking at Starbucks is gonna go along that east wall.
That rendering was taken from right here.
So now you have 5 windows along that side rather than the 2 that are
Some
shown.
additional.
Something to that.
pretty articulate.
Really, that east wall, or east side of the building is pretty much blocked by Starbucks. And
It is. So driving by, you really don't care. It's coming on Fran Lynn and then seeing a beautiful building rush.
Is that,
People aren't gonna be off of Calumet Avenue looking behind Starbucks.
is that road open up to get out where Pepsi is, or is that blocked right there?
No.
There's a trash enclosure at the termination of that access road, bordering on the Pepsi facility.
So it kind of reminds me of the building. I go to University of Chicago in Orland. It's the same thing. They're facing north. When you turn in, you're seeing the facade. On the sides, I don't even know what's on the sides of the building because I could care less. I'm driving up to the facade.
So how many windows did you add on
Everything
that
four-sided
east
building.
elevation? Because you just added windows on the
You're
second
not
level,
gonna
right?
look-
Point them out.
You're not gonna look past
Down two slides
Starbucks.
to I think the first slide of elevation. Yeah, right here. I believe, so this is that east elevation. I think we had 2 windows there before, so we've added 3. We've also added this recessed banding move at the corner that wraps around to the.
And that's looking at Pepsi.
Right.
And there's nothing on the first floor in the new elevation. I'm looking at the Starbucks slide number 16. So the addition of the new windows is on the second floor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would just like to say too, this presentation is really great and easy to understand, and I wish all of our petitioners would present like this. I mean, it's very professional and easy to
No,
read.
it's great.
She's a fellow out in Ricketts.
I'm very, really happy with this, but, you know, thank you for adding the windows on that second level. I mean, I like it. I think it's a great building. You know, to me, all 4 sides are very important, but I agree, like, it is behind Starbucks in this situation on that ground level. I think you know, the glass in the corner, does the job. You know where you're going, you know where you're entering.
South side. We'd see the south side of the building?
Are you kidding me?
Where in South Sirius? What's the back, the back stuff?
You go
Matching
forward 2 slides.
Oh, yeah, and I would like to see the material closer up.
A couple more.
The back is vinyl siding.
So.
You wanna bring it?
It's a garage door. Oh, there it is.
So that's showing the east facing Starbucks and then the south.
Ask and you shall receive.
Emily, for record, it's on
Here it
the
is.
side, right?
Well,
One side.
I love the presentation.
Yeah, it's makes it
How you
different.
learn. It's gonna be stained glass?
I think going forward, everybody needs to do this.
Yeah.
Tell Sergio.
Our standards, like everybody.
Yeah.
All right, I'll leave them out. If you wanna- It's just few and far between.
Yes.
Well,
Is that-
it takes money.
That's what I said, it's gonna be stained glass windows, like the back.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Brian, quick question, and this is mostly the Kingdom Corner. Did you look at that? Obviously, you got that 4-way intersection, right? That every soccer mom pulls in that Starbucks all the time, they're stacking on that street. You know, did you take a look at that when you're doing all your traffic studies and stuff? Because obviously that it's a tough little intersection to navigate sometimes, side population Starbucks.
Yes, so the traffic study, they look at.
Excuse me, can you come up to the microphone, sir, and state your name and address, because this is public sector.
Gary Lewis, Kimmy Horn, 4201 Winfield Road, Suite 600. Yeah, we did look at that intersection on the traffic study. If you go, I don't know what's on here, but in the site plan, we are proposing a through and a left turn lane addition there, just to make the traffic flow better.
Okay. Yeah, because that's a little busy corner at certain times,
Yeah.
in the morning especially.
Starbucks.
And I assume that's when you have a rush of your patients coming in there for procedures first thing. A lot of coffee goers.
And how long has Midwest Orthopedics at Rush been in town?
Good question.
And are they gonna be keeping the same location, or are they gonna move the entire operation to this new facility?
They're consolidated 2 rented locations currently into this one.
Okay, thank you.
So these 2, I'm sorry,
Just learned
you
something.
wanna go?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
These 2 brick samples, I think you had more of a detail, you're kind of doing every other course, right?
Yep, so the darker of the brick details is the majority of the brick. You see the metal panel is here, and you know, the resolution's a little bit rough, but that's the lighter brick is just the continuation of that metal panel on the north and east primarily elevations.
S joints, brake joints, where
Majority of
you
the
going?
network is-
Which masonry joints, S joints, brake joints, where you going with?
Standard rate.
And this is your,
That's the, just, I believe that's
All-
the baking glass sample, but it would be the same thing with the solid for the sample.
Any other questions for this member?
No, I think, thank you for that.
So
great
with
presentation.
all of the other aspects, is there more presentation? Or are we done with all of the presentations?
I can give you a summary of the
I mean,
petitions.
we have three things that we have to vote on, so I was curious if the presentation was continuing.
I will overview. So we have 25007. And that is for the approval of the
Preliminary plat.
subdivision, right? You do have a staff report. I think council has a point that we're going to address concerning a comment from Sergio. But I think we have, as Sergio found, and in working with the engineers, these, you know, we had engineers working together on this project, going over every aspect. It has found that it is fully compliant. There's a note about the reference that will be on the final plat. We may tweak that a little bit, and maybe Ms. Bennett wanted to speak now. I don't know. That's the case for that.
Go ahead and go on with,
Okay.
if you're finished on that comment, is that it adds to 07?
Yes.
And I think Scott's got a good point. This is a kind of a time to focus to that. In the staff report, Sergio was referencing to, your subdivision, I'm sorry, to your zoning code. I'm looking at page 4 of the staff report as to the 25-007 petition. That's referencing out the approval process in the subdivision code. I'm sorry, the approval process, as is laid out in your subdivision code, specifically section 26-278. It sets forth the option or that the plan commission in reviewing your preliminary plat, that you may review this and determine if it's acceptable to you, and then as well introduce changes or revisions to the preliminary plat. That is not compliant with Indiana law. With the preliminary plat that meets code. What I mean by that is the subdivision requirements having to do with the infrastructure and the layout of the actual, re-subdividing of the lot. This is not a development plan. You're getting into all these details. They've given you an abundance of other things here, but as for the plat itself, if it meets subdivision code, then it is a shall. There's no discretion in which to do that. On page 5, there's reference to as well, within your code specifically pertaining to, zoning, that a plat has to be compliant with zoning, standards and zoning, rules. That is also not correct in that compliance, and
So you're saying that this isn't, what's written on here isn't compliant?
well, Sergio is citing to you from your code. He's
Okay.
citing to you from the ordinance. Your ordinances, as you know, from many of the revisions we're doing, the zoning codes, to bringing it up to correct language.
Is this different because it's a PUD though? It's just.
Not for purposes of plat.
Yeah.
Because the platting the structure is laying out what are the requirements based on the subdivision code, unless there are modifications or amendments that they're making to that. And I believe even the language that you have in the plan documents are compliant with the subdivision
Yes.
code. There's
Yeah.
not anything different.
There's no daylight, but I just don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I also don't want to create confusion for you all later, so.
As for everything else, yes, you're creating your own zoning district, and then those standards are up to you to establish. But in the context of the plating, it's really just separating this portion, 2+ acres, into another lot. What then you apply to it as to what can be constructed on that is under separate documents, which is the subdivision, just the subdividing of the single parcel of land. Creating the new lot 4 from the existing and re-subdivided lot 3. So that's just really what I wanted to clarify with that, is that this is not the area where it gets into the discretion of the committee.
Mr. Baker, just a quick question as well. Obviously, this whole PUD had a lot of tax, funded by the taxpayers, this parcel, right? This whole Lake Business Center over the years, right? Is there anything in,
Tax funding?
well, this is a huge TIF district when Simborg had it, right? This is all spin-offs.
I'm not aware of TIP dollars that were expended. It might be, I'm just not aware of it. Obviously,
I'm not sure about that.
Old Town's a
Well, I
TIF
thought this
district.
was all at one time Simborg property. It was supposed to be the white table restaurant at this area years ago, right?
Yes,
The original TIP was created, I'm sorry, the original PUD was created, yes, as mixed-use restaurants.
Right?
And then added to it was warehousing and things of that nature.
Is there any safeguards as a taxpayer that you look at with this kind of a PUD that the parcel stays in like a for-profit business and we don't go into non-for-profits or, you know, obviously got a lot of hospitals in town that take over big buildings and sooner or later those buildings come off the tax rolls and
No, I mean, there's not in the context of anything by statute. Obviously for use purposes. I know you lay out in your PUD documents what your uses are, but that can just be medical. That isn't, could be, you know, for profit or, yeah, there's not restriction on that as currently, you know, is stated. And I'm not seeing obviously that in any prior PUD documents. as to any
I
parcels.
can tell you from experience that comes up in development plans. I don't know. I think that is fully satisfied with that development plan. I don't know, I'm familiar with it years ago, many years ago now, but a development plan can set those thresholds, but the land itself, that's between the, basically the developer getting money at the time. Usually there's an offset at the time that would be governed by the terms of the development. I negotiated those terms on occasion.
right. And I didn't know if this parcel still went underneath that whole development.
I don't
plan
think it
agreement based
is.
off, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's,
I've never seen a document that relates to TIF money being used here.
long time, is that, well, maybe
Well, this was
15.
created in what, 2011, I believe was. when the
Yeah,
first-
maybe
Was when the
that sounds
PUD
right.
ordinance was passed, but if there was.
You're thinking about the document between Simborg and the town as
Right.
it relates to that and who's managing that, but that's not a PUD thing, I don't think, but Nicole will know better than that.
I was
That's
just curious, you know, when it comes up, big tax money being put in this. I don't want to derail the conversation. That's town lawyer does everything.
And Roland, I don't think we put any more tip dollars in this. They got their initial money and that was it. I don't think we've got any recent tip dollars into this development.
Not that I've seen anything, you know, from Scott with your research, sounds like. you
I
have
just have a vague recollection because I was asked to help with that restaurant that never came to fruition.
The meatballs?
Something that involved frog legs, so
Oh,
over there.
That was Mr. Mellon when he was on the council. Terminology.
So just in summary, we'd ask for, on the first item, 25007, we'd ask a motion to approve the preliminary plat for a proposed one lot subdivision. That's what we're asking for on the first item.
Are you done with the overview?
I believe he's hitting them one by one right now, so. whether
Oh,
or not you want
All right,
to-
so then, all right, so we have to do the preliminary plat, we have to do a rezone, which is a recommendation of the council, and we have to do a development plan review. Is the overall presentation for all of those three items complete?
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Bennett, now that we have that complete, we have three separate items to which we have to have a vote on each individual.
Well, as for the preliminary plat, which Scott was just going through, itemizing in 25-007, I really gave you some overview on that, and give you a little bit of other direction. You do need to have a public hearing as to 25-007.
So that was my question. These are all under public hearing. Do we have to have a public hearing on each individual PC petition or as all three of them combined?
My preference is to do it separately.
All right, so I'm starting that. Are we done asking questions with regards to the petitioner on his presentation?
Yeah, can we make motions?
No,
No, because it's a public hearing.
I ask that you open the public hearing only as to the preliminary plat petition.
All right, so I'm going to open the public hearing for PC 25-007, a subdivision preliminary plat for Mr. Yangi as the attorney on behalf of the Munster MOB 1 LLC for a preliminary at subdivision for 9260 Calumet Avenue. If you'd like to speak on this, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. All right.
We have to list it as 9410.
Going once, going twice. I'm closing the public hearing and bringing it back to the board. Let's say
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve PC 25007.
I'll second.
there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Be there none. Denise, you're up.
Yes.
Commissioner Brannigan,
Yes.
President Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Rathman,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonds. Yeah. Counselor Hopper,
Yes.
Counselor Schinkin.
Yes.
All right, moving right along. Next up, we have a public hearing on PC 25-008, which is a rezone of the Munster MOB 1 LLC for a PUD rezone at 9260 Calumet Avenue. If you'd like to speak on behalf of this, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Come on, you're all here. You might as well come up and say, hey. Going once, going twice, close it, bring it back to the board. This is a recommendation on a rezone.
I'll make motion to approve PC 25-008.
There's a motion to approve, or approval to a positive approval to the town council.
Yes.
Favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And second, any discussion? Ms. Denise, you're up.
Counselor Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Brannigan,
Yes.
President Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Rathman,
Yes.
Commissioner Johns. Yes. Counselor Hopper,
Yes.
Counselor Schinkin.
Yes.
All right, moving right along. Next up, PC 25-009, a developmental plan review with the Munster MOB 1 LLC for what is it? The agenda says 3-, so is it 30 odd something square feet, 2-story medical building at 9260 Calumet Avenue? If you want to talk about this new building coming up, please state your name and address at the microphone. Going once, going twice, isn't government fun. Bring it back to the board after closing the public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion to approve PC 25-009, proposed development plan for medical office building at Lake Business Center, including all discussion and findings.
There's a motion, there's a second.
I'll second.
And a second, any discussion? All right, getting a new building. Miss Denise, you're up.
Yes.
Commissioner Brannigan,
Yes.
President Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Rathman,
Yes.
Commissioner Johns.
Yes.
Counselor Hopper.
Yes.
Counselor Schinkin.
Yes.
Congratulations, thank you very much. We look forward to your investment in the community. We're
when
gonna
you break
continue
the ground.
discussion items, which there are none. Other business, do we have any? None, thank you. Findings of facts, PC 25-005, a development plan approval. This has to do with the school town of Munster. We're receiving the approval for the construction of the parking lot bleachers and lighting landscaping for the athletic fields at 8823 Columbia Avenue. Findings of fact, what say you?
Motion approved.
There's a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Be there none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Vote, be there none. Thank you very much. Next meeting is July 8th, 2025. Thank you for helping and investing in our community.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
If I can answer.
I approached the bench. How can I help you?
Number, they were.
Yeah.
The total number. The extension was that the number.
That's why we know all about plan next month. Discuss this.
Okay.
Make sure you get set up with the town of Munster back there.
Yeah, can I send those to you, or would I need to submit them?
Send what?
Yes.
Garvey. All right, yeah, so can I send them to you?
We like the
Yeah,
government
you know.
plan. Absolutely. If you promise, I'll make
No, at munster.org. I'm so sorry.
Yes, I still have questions, but.